Alright guys, it's Charlie Tango 1994 back with another YouTube video. This year for me, it was a 5.5 hour train ride to get up to Derbyshire for this year's Buxton Bash. And when I arrived, the hills around Buxton were shrouded in mist. There was heavy rain and cloud cover. So I quickly set about erecting my tent and getting set up for the weekend, and soon had my kettle on the go for a cup of coffee in my tent. It looked like it wasn't going to be the same kind of sunny weather we'd had last year, and my tent was getting a buffering from the high winds that were set to stay with us for the entire weekend. In the main hall, everything had been set up the night before, with one of the club members bringing his Kenwood TS590 and ACOM amp to use over the weekend. New for this year's Buxton Bash was a new 6-element Yagi, built especially for the event, with another club member attaching an IMAX 2000 to the mast for the vertical. With its smiley face flag battered by the winds, the 30-foot mast stood proud over the hillsides and was visible all around the Buxton Bash. This area is a favoured place for radio operators on various bands because of its naturally high elevation. And with all of the equipment working well, the guys worked hard to hunt out any signals on the frequencies. The bands were proving to be a little flat on the Friday and were generally quieter than it had been last year. The campsite was filling up throughout the day, and lots of people had trouble keeping their tents taut and watertight in the bad weather and high winds. In the far corner of the campsite, a group of guys from up north had assembled their campers in a ring to help protect them from the bad weather. Forming their vehicles into a horseshoe shape, it gave them the shelter to erect a full kitchen and sitting area outside, including a full-size barbecue protected from the wind and rain. Throughout the day, the winds tore through the campsite, and a lot of repegging of people's tents was required to stop them from collapsing or being blown away. And here we are at Buxton Bash 2019. Sad to say, the weather's not been kind to us. We've had heavy rain, strong winds today, and to have people rushing out to repeg out their tents and that sort of stuff, which is a little bit disappointing, but it is what it is. It's just luck of the draw in it sometimes. Radio also has been a little bit quieter, although it's been picking up a little bit later this evening, and been more about dealing with the weather, getting ourselves set up today. Tent went up very easily, and I've got everything I need as planned. So I stopped and had a cup of coffee just a little while ago, and I've come to put an extra layer on before I head back into the main hall where the action is, and yeah, hopefully the weather will cheer up a little bit, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the greatest weather weekend wise, so that's just how it's going to be. The event got busier as more people turned up throughout the day, and the band started to get a bit more active later in the evenings, with signals coming from France and Germany.
Yes, thank you so much, and I'm very happy to stay there long and handy. My spot going out with my Lima radio phone. I'm also Lima radio member. Thank you, Mr. 13 on radio 021. Thank you so much, brother. 26 Charlie Tango. all the best golden numbers here from Germany, from 973. Thank you so much, Sandy 73.
After a windy night under canvas, the views across the hills were starting to improve, with an occasional break in the weather. The wind and rain, however, continued into the Saturday afternoon. Although I had packed my heavy winter coat only as a precaution, it turned out to be a wise decision for this year's Buxton Bash.
So quick check-in for the morning. Pretty windy old night it was. Tent's been blowing about, and been out this morning just to repeg everything out again. Doing all right really, just trouble getting to sleep a little bit because it was windy and noisy, tent noises, all that sort of stuff, but having fun, that's what it's all about. A few of the boys are up already, and I wandered in just now and they're already up on the radio, so good luck to them guys, though it still looks a little bit flat out there this morning on the bands, but there we go. So I'm going to start getting myself together, think about cooking up some breakfast, stuff like that, so I'll be back to you shortly. Cheers guys.
Yeah, okay, you're 5 and 5 here also, 5 and 5 also, 26 Charlie Tango 000 Club Station. Operator is Trevor at the moment. The operator is Trevor. Tango, Romeo, Echo, Victor, Oscar, Romeo. The name is Trevor. QSL. Yeah, the radio's the Kenwood Tango Sugar 590, and we have a 6 element Yagi on the beam, and also an IMAX for the vertical. QSL. Not too much, just a little bit of this and that. There is, I believe there's an Alpha Tango contest on, but quite a good one last night into the West Indies. The dam's been very flat, and the weather, the WX here, as you probably are aware, is not so good there, QSL. Just for the log, what's the personal name that side? What's the personal, QSL? Yeah, okay Steve, well nice to make the contact. Thank you very much for calling into the club station. We're going to try and grab a few more in the log. Hopefully the conditions will pick up today, and hopefully the wind will drop and the rain will just ease a little bit, we hope there. QSO? Yeah, okay, thanks very much Steve, thanks for the QSO. Enjoy the morning, and the DX if it picks up. All the best. 26 Mike Uniform 286, 26 Charlie Tango 000. Bye bye for now.
So I've got my British Army ration stuff stowed away under the little table in my tent, and I'm just going to get organised now, get breakfast on the go. We'll open it up, see what we're going to have for breakfast, and it was fine actually last night. I managed to get some of the food that was on offer from the barbecue, and then a little bit later in the evening, just before I put my head down, I had a Cornish pasty, and there was a sachet of hot chocolate in the condiments from the British Army ration pack. So quite a cosy little evening in my tent, even though it was very blowy and all that. So we'll pull out the hot meals, get some water in the pot, get that heated up, get a cup of coffee, all that sort of stuff, and we're set to go till lunchtime. Cool, back to you in a sec. So just going through what's in the ration pack for hot meals. We've got spicy vegetable pasta, which I might have tonight, vegetarian all day breakfast, which I'm probably going to have now, and beef meatballs and spaghetti. So just supplemental meals, to be honest, because again they are offering food in terms of a barbecue every evening, but just to keep me going throughout the day, I'm going to add bits and pieces from the ration pack just to keep me going so I don't get too hungry. And I also bought a pot noodle. I had the pasty last night I mentioned before, so I'm gradually getting through the food I bought up anyway, so there'll be less to carry home, which is all good. So next step is to get some water in the pan, get the stove going, and pretty soon we should have a hot breakfast and a hot drink. All good. So breakfast is on just outside the door of the tent. Bit of a problem lighting it, but seems to have got it going now. So there's water in there for a coffee, as well as obviously heating the meal itself. See how long it takes. In this wind, I'm not 100% confident it's going to work brilliantly, but let's see what happens. So that's breakfast pretty much ready. Had a few problems with the stove in this wind, as you might expect, to be honest, and although it was burning away, by the time it had burnt through all the fuel, the water wasn't boiling hot or anything like that, but it is warm enough to have a coffee in that. So I've got my coffee sorted, and we're going to open up the all-day vegetarian breakfast and tuck into that. That won't be steaming hot, but again, it's better than having it cold, I suppose. So that's breakfast with me coffee. Actually not too bad. It always looks like slop, which it is, but I've got little sausages in there, quite tomatoey. As I say, it's vegetarian, so there's no meat, but I'm not too bothered about that, to be honest. It is slightly warm. It's not really what you would consider a hot meal, I suppose. If the stove was working better, then I might have had a better result, but more of a camping experiment than necessary. But in any case, I mean, it's going to fill me up, and I'm going to quite enjoy it, especially with me coffee and that. So I'm going to tuck in and speak to you later. Cheers. So that's me scran done. I'm just going to sit back now, finish my coffee, have a general relax for a while. Plan was to get the mast up today because it was too windy last night, but to be honest, it's pretty windy now, so it's probably not going to be worthwhile doing, or just too much of a struggle to do. So not sure what the plans are, setting up my own station this weekend. Try and fill the gaps with other sort of camping bits and pieces, but this is Buxton Bash. I will get the guys indoors on their radios as much as possible, so there'll be something to see. Other than that, it's me sitting in my tent and still having a good time. Literally sitting in the tent, chucking it down with rain, grey skies everywhere, wind blowing like a gale, but I'm still having a good time. So I'm staying here. I'm going to put the radio on, kick back for a while, maybe shut my eyes again for a bit. No issues with that. See you in a bit.
Having a wander around the site, hoping for a glimpse of some sunshine, I came across a number of cars with impressive mobile antennas in various shapes and sizes. And once again, Ozzy, who runs the weekly North East Net, had set up his static mobile DX station, which stood head and shoulders over everyone. Although the weather improved slightly as the day progressed, it still would have been unwise for me to erect my radio mast in these winds for fear it might get damaged. So I nipped back to my cosy little tent to cook up a bit of lunch. After lunch, the sun had started to peek out from behind the clouds, and the hall was filling up with visitors who, unperturbed by the weather, had ventured out for the day. And the hall was full of talk of the recent Activate All Counties event, and with it being the 50th anniversary of the lunar landing that evening, plans were being made to call into the anniversary event being run on AM later that evening. The bands too were becoming more active, with more stations coming in from around Europe. While standing outside later in the afternoon, two guys approached us, asking if this was a campsite, as they were looking for somewhere to stay. After a day in the wind and rain on the hills, doing a sponsored charity walk from Marie Curie, they had walked the near 30 miles from Stoke that day and were desperate to get dried out and get some sleep. We, of course, let them put their tent up and get in out of the weather. On the Saturday evening, the draw was made for this year's prize, in aid of the Charlie Tango website. One lucky winner will get his hands on this brand new President Lincoln 2, and all the money raised goes to help fund the website and forum for the
Blue
club.
sky.
By the early evening, the clouds had moved on and the skies were beginning to brighten, and once again we got to enjoy the evening sun with these incredible views of the local countryside. One of the other club members had brought up with him a new Icon radio, so this was put in place of the Kenwood radio we'd been using over the weekend, and it did well at displaying the signals it was getting from the antennas on the mast.
It's all fibre optics in Lincoln.
Is that green colour? Is it what you see?
Yeah. But you just have 6
By Saturday night, the logbook had swelled to well over 50 contacts, helped by an Alpha Tango event that had been taking place that day, with calls coming in from all across Europe. It was too late now to erect the mast, and my new drone had been designated a grounded status for the weekend because of the high winds. But, with a narrow window of opportunity, I decided to go for a kamikaze mission and hope that I didn't lose control of the drone or have it smashed into the side of the buildings by high winds. In these conditions, even the takeoff was dicey, and the onboard GPS was working overtime to keep it in the air. It was getting heavily buffeted by the wind and didn't have enough power to get above head height, and in the end reported an error and attempted an automatic landing.
Stop. You ready?
Having watched me fail, another club member pulled out his Maverick Pro, and it was clear to see the difference between a cheap pocket drone and a more high-end drone, even in these terrible flying conditions. With powerful RF signals coming from the radio mast, it was a job to keep it away from the antennas in these strong winds, which could produce interference and loss of flight control for the drone.
Yeah, that'll jam it completely.
At the designated time that night, we put a call into the 50th anniversary lunar landing event and was quick to get a response.
Yeah, 26 Charlie Tango 000. Any contact? We've got you. The operator this side is Ozzy, not Adrian. He stood behind me though. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Buxton in Derbyshire. Well, I'll do our best. You're a little bit low. You're a 4 and a 3 on me, 4 and a 3. But I'll stand by if there's anyone wanting to come through to us there. Okay, I'll stand by. Cheers.
The radio is using with that Roger Bleak. I can't understand how we're doing that.
Was that there?
I don't know, but it's the proper... You know when you watch the lunar landings and you hear the beeps, they have a one beep and then they have the... Yeah, if you listen, they've got the beeps. It's like, whoa. And when they did the lunar landing, they were on AM as well, which is why they did an AM mode. It's a brilliant idea, because there's loads of people all said they might do an AM now, and this is a perfect opportunity to do it.
How long was it since it was the landing? I'm not
50 years.
So it's 50, right,
Yeah,
so
that's why I'm doing it
that's why
today.
I'm doing it, yeah.
50 years
That's brilliant.
today.
26 Whiskey Bravo 141.
There. Whiskey Bravo 141.
Yeah, the Charlie Tango 000, Bobby, second copy.
2121 on the mic, hello?
Good evening, Adrian. I was just trying to get you through to Tango Charlie 62 down on the Isle of Wight. You've been called there, my friend. Give us a call out to Charlie Tango 000, 2121 is on the skip. Hello, 2121, this is 26. Whiskey Bravo.
Whiskey Bravo, stand by. 388 2121. Ask Stu to call again now, QRN.
Please call again, please, Stuart.
62 21 21. Copy. 3 and 0. Over.
You know he's there.
388 21 20. I've lost him. He was 3 and 0 in the clear. Back to you.
Yeah, you're disappeared. You weren't 0. Want to report back to you?
Oh, is there again?
Yeah, Adrian, you've got 4 and 1, my friend. 4 and 1.
QSL 4 and 1. Thanks for the pass through. 7-3.
No problem. Everybody else thinking of Tango Charlie 62.
Yeah, how's you on? All right.
It was Sunday morning. The rain had left us, and the skies were blue again. Most people were up early to start packing away the equipment and preparing for the long drive home. The camper village had been packed away, and the lads from up north were ready to head off for the long drive home. Despite having travelled north half the day to get here, I was informed politely that we were in fact in what they called the Midlands, and although it was difficult to understand their dialect, they came from towns in these northern lands with mystical names like Gateshead, Middlesbrough and Red Car, and they dined out on a local delicacy known as chicken parmo. It turns out they were a rick canny bunch of lads, which round my manor means they're a right bunch of diamond geezers, and were generous with their hot burgers and sausages served up on their barbecue all weekend for anyone that wanted one. It was great to meet up with you guys and learn, despite the language problems, of these northern lands I hear so much about. Pretty soon the campsite was emptied out as more and more people made the long trip home, and the Buxton Bash 2019 gently drew to a close. I'd scheduled a cab for late in the morning to give myself plenty of time to get packed away, and I was one of the last to say goodbye. Once again, it had been another incredible weekend, and as always, our hats go off to the organisers and producers of this fantastic event, with a special thanks for the guys who manned the quay all weekend, kept the hot food coming, and made the extra effort to make the Buxton Bash such an amazing event each year. As for me, well, I came home with more than I'd arrived with, since a friend of the North gifted me a USB work light which he'd been using while camping, and it's going to be put to great use in future radio review videos on this channel. If you want to stay in touch, don't forget you can find me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Leave a message below and I'll see you at the next Buxton Bash. 73s.